Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I'll be asking my guests about the pain and failures that have resulted in the internal changes that have made them the unique individuals they are. So if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, keep listening. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the CEO of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that put people and planet before profit. We were one of the first B Corps in the UK in 2015, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I realised a few years ago that if we really were going to change the world for better, we would also need to change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit had to be mirrored by an inner change, and that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
Because we used to examine everything that we used in terms of materials, factories, everything with the design of the store fit, I kind of was doing that naturally, but I wasn't really saying to clients, this is better, or I wasn't kind of shouting about it. So I was doing a lot in stealth mode. In the last 7 or 8 years, I've kind of realised that that was a bit different and maybe I should tell people. And so that has sort of tipped.
My guest today is Chloe Bullock. Chloe graduated in design at Nottingham Trent University with her degree presented to her by Torval and Dean. Following 10 years at the Body Shop, a job she got by writing a handwritten letter to Anita Roddick, she has since gone on to be one of the leading voices and practitioners in sustainable interior design, and recently published a book called that, Sustainable Interior Design, commissioned by the Royal Institute of British Architects. One of her clients described her as someone who creates spaces that bring joy, and another as a force for good, like a Jedi Knight, and I love her for that. The authenticity of her work clearly shines through to her clients, and she clearly is a force for good in this world. I was also told that Chloe's quietness is her strength and that she was the sweetest person in one client's life. Chloe, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's lovely to be here.
I'm intrigued to know whether the graduation ceremony was on ice or land.
No, it's in the Theatre Royal, I think, in Nottingham. So, Torval and Dean, that was quite exciting.
Yeah, not too many people can claim that, I don't think. So we're going to start, as I will with these podcasts, with your early years, because I think that many people are formed very much by their experiences in their years. So tell me a bit about your early childhood.
So my parents had moved to Brighton from the Midlands to sort of have me to sort of set up home and have a family, which consists of just me because I was the only one.
Okay.
And part of Brighton where it's very terrace houses, you kind of knew all the kids around you. It was just a really nice, loving upbringing and really, really wonderful. I felt very fortunate. I did used to wonder what it would be like to have an older brother, because apparently that was a thing that I was fixated on, and my parents would sort of say, well, there's not a lot we can do about that now.
So what work did your mum and dad do?
My dad was a lecturer at a further education college in Brighton, and my mum took the first 5 years of having me to sort of be at home, which was a lovely thing for her to do for me, and you know, taking a sidestep from her own career to do that. Having the income of an FE lecturer was not huge. We had quite a modest life, but it was great. So my parents were definitely both in education. My mum applied for a job at Sussex University within the faculty and then ended up working there all the way through her career, really, and sort of progressed to the head of faculty within one of the departments. So it meant that I got to go to the play scheme at Sussex University, which as a building or a group of buildings was a really interesting place to visit.
So obviously not huge amounts of money floating around. Is that why you were the only child, or?
They said to me that they didn't think the world was a very nice place. And they sort of decided not to have a big family, which made me wonder, well, you had me. How did you think I was going to fit into this horrible world? But it was difficult. My mum has rhesus negative blood type.
Right, okay.
And it was 1970 I was born, but there was a whole thing about the second baby in the early 70s. It was kind of quite a risky thing to do. So I think that was part of it as well.
Yeah. So if I was to ask you what were the values that they instilled into you in your childhood, what would you say?
They were it was about sort of justice, but not in a loud way, but just my dad was involved with the trade union. It's called NATFI, and so that was kind of very present, the sort of equality and making people check that people were treated fairly. Although my grandparents were in the Midlands, we were very close. It must have been quite difficult to bring up a child that far away from your support network, but they made their own support network locally. There was things happening, so there was sort of a community called WAM, actually, WAM.
Nothing to do with the band.
Women, the Women's Action Movement or something like that, and so they would exchange tokens to babysit for each other's children and things like that. So it's kind of quite a community.
Right. So quite on the left of politics by the sound of it, is that? Yeah,
my dad is a historian, and he's written 6 books now.
Okay.
All about social democracy, the socialism in the early 20th century. So his first book was a book that he helped Sylvia Pankhurst's son edit about Sylvia Pankhurst.
Okay.
And we were lucky actually to meet her granddaughter not that long ago at a thing at the Sussex University, actually. So that kind of set him off. And then from then he wrote a book which was his thesis combined with some work a friend of his had done as well, Logie Barrow. And then from there he wrote some books on his own as well. And it's kind of documenting that area of history, really. And so spent a lot of time in Manchester going through the archives of the Independent Labour Party and things like that.
So quite often children are rebellious and do the opposite of their parents. So on this isn't a political podcast, obviously, so we'll move on in a minute. But are your politics similar to your parents? Have you gone in the opposite direction?
I like to think I'm quite open-minded and not too into compartments. I try and think around things. The school I went to, my secondary school, was quite eye-opening because it was on the edge of a couple of council estates, so I kind of could see how different people were living. But no, I'm probably in the same place. We talk freely about politics at home, at my parents' house, and they listen to me as much as I listen to them sometimes as well.
So I lived in a nice house, but near the edge of a huge council estate, and I was always aware of a kind of privilege, I guess, in my life. Was that similar to you?
Oh, completely. I mean, to have 2 parents that were together, it was quite unusual.
Right.
My friend at school lived on the council estate. Her parents would send her food in a taxi, because they were in the pub. It's just very dysfunctional.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking to sort of see. So I really did realise how fortunate I was, and kind of didn't particularly rebel as a consequence. Kind of just
right. Yeah. And as that sense of privilege, what difference has that made to what you've done in life since?
I suppose in my business, I've kind of used my business to the agility of being a sole practitioner. I guess I've used that as a way to show other people what can be done. I don't particularly feel that I'm a successful business person in a money way at all. I've survived 19 years, so that's probably saying something. Yeah.
Would you say that there was a spiritual dimension to your childhood? What, if anything, were those kind of values that were part of you growing up?
Subconsciously, my parents didn't have me christened, which was quite unusual then, and all my friends would be talking to me about showing me all their sort of trinkets that they got for their christening and things like that. And it's like, why wasn't I christened? And they wanted me to make my own decisions to evaluate. And I think that has left me with quite an inquiring mind about that and kind of listening to different people and different viewpoints. There was Sunday school and things like that going on, and because your friends went, you go along, and I couldn't really relate to it very well. And school was still quite religious in those days, and hymns and things. I kind of, to me, it was all about being a good person, and it was about being good rather than following a template.
Yeah. And I hear, I'm one of three, so I wouldn't know, but I hear from other people that quite a few people who were the only child quite often have an imaginary friend. Did you have one of them?
No, but I did, because I grew up, when I was a baby, my mum and dad had just got 2 kittens, so I actually thought that they were my sisters. I didn't know otherwise. I didn't. So I kind of had a very closeness to the animal kingdom quite early on.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So I guess being in Brighton, you're pretty close to countryside and nature and certainly the sea. So was that an impact on your early life?
I mean, we spent time in all of those places, but it didn't sort of have I can't remember sort of a deep nature connection. I was in the woodcraft folk for a while, which was quite interesting. And
you might have to remind us what they are. I've heard of that, but I'm not quite sure what they are.
So, well, from a 7-year-old Chloe's perspective, it was like a mixed version of brownies.
Oh, okay.
But you go off into nature and you'd sort of learn about tree species, and I can remember we go on a trail and we'd leave markers to show where we were going, so that when we came back. And
I thought it was a band when you first said it. Actually.
Oh, really?
Obviously not. No singing involved.
The uniform wasn't so great, so I think that was part of why I didn't want to be one for too long. But yeah, that was kind of a nature connection point.
I've got this vision of pixies in my head. I'm not sure if that...
Well, I was a pixie in the brownies. So
was that brownie thing? Okay, right. So as you grow up, obviously you ended up doing a degree in design. What age were you when you kind of first felt that as a direction you might go in?
So I was really always encouraged to follow the subjects that I was passionate about in school, which was quite hard because to be passionate about something in my school was not very cool. It was all about trying not to be there. But it was definitely art and design. And I remember my mum and dad just saying, keep going with that if you're enjoying it. I mean, my dad being a history lecturer really did want me to do well in history as well, which, at times didn't go so well. But so I just followed that through and did it at A-level. I didn't particularly do very well first time with my O-levels, but I got a few in the end. I got quite a lot in the end. But I think I'm just one of those people that gets there eventually. But the point where I chose my degree, we're lucky with the sort of the path for design, because you go off and do 1 year as an art foundation course before you go to university, which is just such a lovely, well, it's not a year, because you're sort of from September to January trying everything. So you're doing textiles, you're doing sculpture, you're doing life drawing. It's, bits of everything. And then you kind of are encouraged to then go for the thing that you liked and start applying to university. So
where did this design side come from? It doesn't sound like your mum and dad were in that direction. Where do you think it comes from?
my Uncle James, my dad's brother, moved to Eindhoven when I was a baby, really. And so our holidays were mostly going to visit him in the Netherlands. And there's just, I think it comes back to there. There's a very strong product design and furniture design presence in the Netherlands. He was in Eindhoven, which is where Philips were from. So I think that had a real influence, actually.
And so obviously you did your degree. What was the gap between working for the Body Shop and your degree? What were you doing before then?
First of all, it was the recession in the early 90s. So it was a mixture of things, a bit of freelancing, but also, working in a cinema and things like that. And then I got a job as a junior designer in a furniture company locally to Brighton. I mean, to go back, I understand why I went back to Brighton, because I loved it. But at that time, it was tourism, finance, insurance. There's nothing creative happening in Brighton.
Right. Well, no, it's totally the opposite now, isn't it?
It's crazy how it's changed. So, and that first proper job as a junior designer, there was another bump in the recession, and it was kind of last in, first out. And that's at the point where I was writing to Anita.
Right. And what was it that attracted you about the Body Shop? What did you? I mean, now everyone knows the story, and it's they were one of the first sustainable businesses really in the UK. But I think back in those days, not as many people had heard of them. Perhaps you had, because they were based on the South Coast, weren't they? But
yeah, I literally, I was 6 when the shop opened in Brighton. It was in the North Lane, which was, a part of Brighton that we loved going to. There was Infinity Foods there. It was a really nice place to go. So I think because my mum loved it, and then my gran and my uncle started buying things in there, I think I became very aware of the shop very early. And then Anita would be following campaigns and her activism. She used her windows for her activism. So I got to learn about inequity across the world, campaigns, Save the Whale.
What age was this then?
I just think it was very subliminal from maybe 8 or 9, it's just something.
Yeah, well, this is interesting. I mean, you need to realise how unusual you are here, I think. I'm not sure you do. Because, number one, having parents, particularly in those days, I think maybe things have changed, but having parents who pretty much let you follow your own heart, as it were, it's quite unusual. There's a book I've read, I can't remember, it's written by a cancer nurse, and it's called 5 Regrets of the Dying. And one of the biggest regrets people have on their deathbed is letting themselves be influenced by other people too much in terms of what they've done in their lives. So I think it's really positive that you didn't have that from your parents and you could follow your own heart. And secondly, to be aware of those kind of global issues at such an early age. I think this is pretty unusual.
I do remember, writing letters for Amnesty, and it just became quite normal for me.
I think it's not normal, let me tell you. But
and it wasn't particularly normal for my school either.
And again, the other thing, just pulling out from what you said, is the lack of motivation by money. I think that, again, if you're following your heart, primarily money is often second, whereas quite a few people end up not following their heart because there's this big pressure to earn money, and they can earn that from being an accountant, whereas actually they really want to be an artist. I mean, I was at a university reunion this weekend, actually, and there were a lot of lawyers and accountants there, and I wondered to myself how many of them actually were called to do that in their life. But clearly for you, you've pretty much your whole career followed that path, haven't you?
I mean, I was lucky that I hit on the Body Shop thing, which brought together my love of design with my love of ethics. And I mean, I really didn't want to leave Body Shop. I was cry my eyes out while leaving. It was time to leave because...
Okay, well, let's go on to that in a minute. So I want to dig into the body shop because you were there for 9 or 10 years?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, this is before B Corp, before being sustainable was really a thing in the UK. What was it like working? You were at HQ, were you?
Yeah. So
what was it like in that office on a day-to-day basis?
There were 2 offices at the HQ. There was the one in Littlehampton, which was the Pagoda building, which beautiful, and it's where Anita was based, and the cafeteria was a 50s diner. It was amazing, and we were along the road in this kind of nondescript kind of office building, which, you know, we were very much part of the company, but I'd never felt like we were in the heart of the company because we weren't in that special building. I was surrounded by really amazing people. We were in a department that included all the sort of business development managers for different parts of the world. So there's lots of people coming in as visitors and lots of people going off travelling. It was just very, very exciting.
And how much of Anita was permeating through the business by that point? Because by this time there was a few hundred people working there, weren't there?
There were probably, more than that with the 2 buildings. So it was kind of post the floating on the stock exchange. They were just sort of doing a big growth spurt. So that was when I moved into the retail design department. It was just a really, really exciting time. So Anita would come in and out, but she never really, I don't think I ever had a conversation with her myself. But she would, you know, she'd talk to the managers, she'd talk to the director. It was just the other people in the business. It was just Anita all the way through, and obviously Gordon as well. Gordon doesn't get talked about so much.
No, it doesn't.
But
I don't think there would have been Anita without Gordon.
No, definitely.
Yeah. What was the energy like in the building?
It was enthusiastic. You know, all the things you hear about as standard now were happening. You know, we'd have company days every year at the Dome. I remember being at the Dome. You know, they'd have a comedian, a sort of famous comedian compere, and they'd have all these various sort of things happening all day, and everybody in the business was there. The whole business was closed for a day.
Right.
It was just really exciting. You all felt together. It felt sort of very equal.
So did you feel like your purpose in life was matching the purpose of the company at that point?
Yeah, it just felt like you were in a business that was a machine for good. You know, it was doing really, really good things and selling really good products in shops that had really happy staff. You know, so they'd have like a newsletter that went out. They were starting to experiment with like videos, sort of newsletters that were going out. And I remember when they were looking at setting up the first website, you know, it's all very exciting. We were all working on Apple Macs. I mean, the only thing up until that point I had to compare this to was working in a very old-fashioned furniture factory.
So why did you leave the body shop then?
So I've been there 10 years. All sorts of changes had happened. But in the meantime, I kind of knew the process for me as a retail designer. You know, they'd experiment, we'd prototype a retail design, we'd roll it out as a pilot, and then we'd roll it out. I kind of knew how this process was going to go, and I could just feel like we'd done one, and I knew that we were going to go back to the beginning. So there's a few things really.
You wanted a new challenge by the sound of it.
Yeah. I felt a little bit overlooked. I felt like I'd been there so long that other people were coming in to do things that I'd already started to do the work on, and then, you know, so I felt a little bit overlooked. They were bringing in SAP.
Yeah.
and it just seemed to getting that up and running. You know, we had to look at everything in granular detail and put a number to everything. And it's just kind of...
So did you feel that it had kind of gone away a bit from its core?
No, I don't. The joy and the heart-centeredness of it was very much still there. But I just think because I'd been moved by then to the London office, where it didn't feel quite as exciting as it did in the Littlehampton office.
What did you go on to do after that?
So I set up Materialise Interiors.
Oh, that's when you started. Right, okay.
And so,
big jump.
Yes.
What nervous, excited? How would you describe how you were feeling at the start of that?
All my colleagues were saying, have you got work coming in to do? And I was saying yes, and I didn't. I just wanted to I actually, it was one of those points I'd read about, you know, let the universe catch you kind of scenarios. Right. And I just felt a good thing to do.
Again, this is probably quite unusual. I mean, your parents, from what you say, fairly safe in terms of, you know, normal jobs, as it were, as my parents used to say. Yeah. But this isn't something that many people find easy to do, is to just start something new without any promise of work.
I think because I hadn't had children, I'd made myself overpay my mortgage to sort of give myself a bit more security. I'd done some things to prepare the way. I didn't completely just jump out. It felt the right thing to do. It really did. And actually, you know, Body Shop were my first client once I was on the outside,
okay.
Which happened by accident in the end. But and that helped. It's strange. My first week being self-employed, I had a fire in my flat. So
really?
Yeah. So it's crazy. But yeah, there was a smoke out. The toaster didn't let go of the bread, and I was outside in the bin store at the flat, and I couldn't get back in. So that was kind of like the Friday of my first week in work for myself, which was quite bizarre. And then, of course, you know, had to go and live somewhere else while the flat kind of got rebuilt.
Goodness.
So that was quite distracting, actually.
At any point, did you feel that you'd made the wrong decision here?
Looking at it like this, I don't think I thought too deeply about it. It was just kind of just surviving and managing. Yeah.
So I was just going to come on to talk about, you know, failure and trauma, because the way, as I've now quite old, the older I get, the more I realise that we're shaped by our experiences. Quite often the negative ones we think are negative at the time are actually incredibly positive in terms of shaping us and forming us as human beings and people that can make a difference in the world. So it may be the fire, it might be something else. Mm-hmm. Are there any significant events like that you feel have shaped you in your life?
You know, the first losing that first junior designer role, and then, you know, really like there really is nothing out there kind of, and I felt in a corner to write that letter to Anita. That wasn't just, you know, that I can't remember what I wrote on it, but it was pretty heartfelt. And I think it was Anita's PA that was the person that dealt with it and made it all work, and that it led on to the work experience that I got. But that was a big pivotal point for me.
And how long ago is it you started your own business? 19
years in November.
And how have you changed during that 19 years, would you say?
I kind of stepped out into the business world, doing everything that I knew from my Body Shop education in ethical business. So I just carried on doing that anyway. So, you know, I was with the ethical bank, and I had all of those things going on and being sort of mindful. I was doing, because we used to examine everything that we used in terms of materials, factories, everything with the design of the store fit. I kind of was doing that naturally, but I wasn't really saying to clients, this is better, or I wasn't kind of shouting about it. So I was doing a lot in stealth mode. And then in the last 7 or 8 years, I've kind of realised that was a bit different and maybe I should tell people. And so that has sort of tipped.
Yeah, one of your clients told me you were a bit like a kind of silent assassin in a good sort of way. So he basically said you'd influenced him subtly, quietly, but he was now doing things he wouldn't have dreamt of doing a few years ago because of your, in the sustainability side of life, because you'd basically got under his skin and managed to change him.
I know who that client is, and it's a client with a restaurant and a beauty business as well. But I kind of, at that time I was kind of telling him about this offsetting carbon for the meals that people are buying, and would you like to consider maybe doing a scheme like that? And then he started to ask me about other tree planting, and then I was saying, where are you buying your ingredients from? It's a nice ripple.
I like the quiet. I mean, we think of influencers these days, and they're all pretty loud people, aren't they? But I quite like I wonder how much difference those people make, some of them. But I think I quite prefer the quiet influence. And, I think from what I hear, you've made quite a difference to quite a few companies by your impact in terms of pointing them in a better direction than the one they were going anyway.
It's nice to know.
But I also think that as we try and make a difference through our jobs, we also we hit the buffers unless we're changing ourselves too. And I know certainly in the last 10 years I've massively changed as a person compared to how I used to be, both in how I lead, how I am. Interested to know how you think you've changed in more recent years, would you say?
Well, I haven't gone on all these trips that you've gone to find exciting people and ways of doing things, but I
did meet you on a spiritual retreat though, didn't I? So what was it that kind of drew you to that kind of thing?
Oh, well, that was completely, I want to do that because that's the sort of thing we would have done at Body Shop. We were, I didn't always get chosen to do that, but I did do a couple of things like that, but it's completely take yourself out of your day to day. And the Body Shop thing I remember was kind of, walking in someone else's shoes kind of scenario and things like that. And, so self-exploring and development. And
again, pretty unusual for its time.
Yeah.
How would you define spirituality? It's just that it's being used now in a business context, that word, which most people wouldn't have used a few years ago, but I've heard it being used quite a bit recently. But obviously that it's a term that people can mean probably all sorts of different things by. I just wondered what your definition would be.
For me, it's nothing that's within a framework. It's about going inwards and being authentic and connecting and being good. I think I have had, I had a friend who's passed away now who introduced me to a form of Buddhism, and I found that, it was one of the first times I've kind of really connected to those ways of thinking. So I would chant, and I would, even when I was commuting, I'd get up extra early and do this chanting and, and reading. And
I thought you were going to say you were chanting on the train for a minute, but no, not moved on to that.
Well, that would have been quite handy to just cross over the time. But so that kind of was interesting, and I felt that it was a self-discovery thing, but I kind of fell out of love with it because I didn't like the organised religionness of it, and when money came into it, kind of, I didn't think the money had to play a part in how you feel as being a good person.
tends to kill the life, isn't it? I like the word connection, though, I must say, because I may change, but I define spirituality as connecting with three things. One, yourself. I think quite a few people are disconnected from themselves, and I think for me, that's what I'm doing when I'm sitting contemplating, is connecting with myself, and then connecting with nature and connecting with other people, as you mentioned. I don't know if it's anything more than that, actually. What do you think?
I mean, the connecting with nature, it's been so important. Just, hugging a tree is just such a lovely thing to do.
I mean, obviously that's become a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But I, like you, have done that. I probably wouldn't want anyone else to see it, but the trees are amazing, and I think there's so much we can learn from trees.
So Natalie Fee, I don't know if you know her, she's an environmentalist. She's been doing this practice this year where she goes and sits under the same tree every morning, every day, whatever the weather, and just observes what's changing around her, how she feels, her relationship with this tree. And I feel that I'd like to do something like that.
I can relate to that. So I go to some woods and have some coaching by a guy called Giles Hutchins, and I actually slept under a particular tree. But I didn't do a lot of sleeping. I was there for the night, let's put it that way. It was very windy and rainy, and I didn't have any cover. But I learnt so much from just sitting under that tree for the night.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I mean, just taking your shoes off and grounding yourself. I just love to do that, and I don't do that enough either.
How, in your work life, how does your spirituality manifest itself, would you say?
Yeah, I suppose it is very, very present. I treat people how I want to be treated. I don't want to have any harm in my work, which is hard because interior design, the materials and the processes that we use are horribly harmful. But I really want to lessen that as much as I can. It's funny, I find myself in a corner again. I love the people in my industry, but I don't love my industry. I think we are caught up with trends in the same way as garments and fashion, interiors and trends, unnecessary use of the earth's resources and the pursuit of new. Why can't we appreciate things that are already here? Why do we always have to have this constant churn? But I do admire the skills of the people in my industry.
So do you ever use, I mean, this is more the building than the interior design, but I heard that concrete is responsible for about 15% of the world's carbon emissions. Is that right?
It's probably more than that. I mean, the built environment is something like 39% of all carbon.
Right.
I think we get really fixated on carbon. I kind of it's the biodiversity crisis that I'm mostly concerned about, and that includes greenhouse gases within it, but the pollution and the landfill that the construction industry uses, and we're literally poisoning the air, the land and the sea, all the waterways. There's just chemicals present, and it's we talk about the built environment, but interior design is a really large section of that. Somehow we're not being pointed at as much as the rest of the built environment is. But I think,
I guess you can't see it from the. You point at what you can see from the outside. Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I feel that we've got a long way to go. I think architecture is definitely improving, and it's kind of part of their narrative is to lessen the impact, but somehow interior design.
But I'm hearing that this kind of slightly uncomfortable position of you sitting within an industry you don't like, but doing something you love. But that's probably something we're all called to do, because we're in a broken system, which we aren't going to change overnight, but we can sit in the broken system and make some small changes, which clearly you're doing.
And that's what I've really been exploring for the last couple of years, is kind of, during writing the book. And I've just felt that where do I fit when I go back out there after writing the book, and where can I have influence? I am a quiet person. I am forcing myself to sort of talk, but I really love my professional body, and I can have some influence there and be this approachable person within the industry, really, and to just nudge people and to, just let them know that there are better choices to be made.
Yeah. I mean, I love the book, by the way. Just the beauty. I mean, it's not an area, I've never been in your space, but just that quote from one of your clients about bringing joy, creating spaces that bring joy. I mean, fantastic.
Yeah.
What a thing to be doing, really.
Yes.
And I think that you can see that joy and beauty in the book, which is called Sustainable Interior Design, and it is mainly, well, it's not mainly, but there's a lot of pictures in there, which I enjoy.
I've over-delivered on words and pictures within the book, but I needed to, because I really needed to show that sustainability is also beautiful. It's not like you lose one thing to have the other. It's so important that people realise that we can look after the health of occupants of spaces. We can use these designs. I was taught to use design as a means to problem solve. That's what design is for me. And I think because that background for me was furniture and product design, somehow interior design, it's all still just about aesthetics, and there's nothing behind it. You can have both.
Yeah, there's definitely a soulful quality to it, isn't there? That does people good. And that's the good design. Isn't just an environment. It's something that does something to the insides of us.
Definitely.
Rather than just the outside of us.
Yeah. I mean, studying the Well Building Standard, which is a human-centered design certification, it's huge, and kind of turning buildings into self-sufficient spaces. So getting more into living building challenge, and kind of thinking about growing food on the roof of a building, and kind of being conscious of its where it is and who was there before, what biodiversity was there before, what people were there before, and kind of bringing that back. It's sort of regenerative design, really, and flourishing and thriving, and using design to do that.
Yeah, so, I love that.
Much as I'm an interior designer, I'm kind of desperate to get on the outside of buildings as well.
So let's think about the future. What do you think you'll be doing in 5 years' time?
Well, I'd love to be getting involved with some projects like I've just described, using those kind of certifications. I feel like I've done the study, but the clients aren't quite there with me yet. I guess I can't find the right word for my place within my industry. I don't think I'm a rebel or an agitator, but I want to carry on being that person to kind of make people think a bit more broadly about what they're doing, and to, have some ripples going out there. I want to have an impact. I don't want to just lose myself in clients' projects where I can't show what can be done. I want to just put myself in the place to have the most positive impact that I can find.
This is a question I sometimes ask at interviews, which they don't always find easy to answer, so we'll have a go. What unique gift have you got yet to share with the world?
Well, maybe showing that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to have an impact. There's different ways of delivering your message. I often think I'm quite a reluctant person in this position in my industry, really. I'm quite surprised that the ball has fallen and I'm the one that's caught it, and there hasn't. And I'm quite happy to do what I can, but you can do it your way, in the way that you can do it. You don't have to do it the way other people do it to have some impact. I hope that I am positively influencing without bashing people over the head too much.
Well, sometimes that doesn't really influence them. It just makes them annoyed, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, and it's an exercise I sometimes do in workshops, is get people to imagine their own funeral, which can be a bit macabre, obviously. But it's something I do from time to time, being slightly weird. What's going to be on your headstone if you could choose now? What would you want to be there?
Oh, Paul. I don't know that I even want to have a headstone.
That's a good way out of not answering the question, isn't it?
Because I remember in your book you said that somebody just wanted, as in Nelson Mandela, just wanted his name only.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
I'd like people to be left with a feeling rather than reading words that told them what to think. I would like them to just feel how I was to them.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, I definitely, I don't want to take up space or use more materials at the end of my life. I want to be useful all the way through.
So I'm going to ask all my guests these questions at the end of each episode, and one of them is I have to obviously answer these myself before I could ask other people. And it does make you think. But the first one is, tell me one piece of advice you wish you had when you were starting out that you didn't have, basically.
I wish I'd shouted about it earlier. I wish I'd just, I might have attracted more like-minded clients earlier if I'd have just said, I don't want to cause harm. For me, it's people, planet and animals, that I'm trying to do things in a better way. So I had all of those tools in my belt, and I was using them, but I just wasn't being vocal about it. So I probably wish I'd done that earlier.
You mentioned animals a couple of times. We didn't really touch on that at the time. Is there any way that you can kind of bring in that biodiversity side into interior design?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been my, now I'm in the world of impact reports and thinking about my next year and things, because I am a micro business who's a B Corp. But biodiversity loss is definitely sort of top of kind of my focus now, and kind of, so these chemicals that are used in my specifications can end up having an impact on biodiversity. But ways I can have a wider impact with that is to ask my professional body to kind of do share some training on that, which I've gone through myself, a biodiversity collage, which is like a 2-hour. It was really, really good use of 2 hours, and very enlightening, and lots of resources to use afterwards. So I can have an influence through my professional body. I'm also one of the co-founders of Interior Design Declares, which is the interior design version of Architects Declare. So we are biodiversity losses and climate change are the two things that we're trying to raise awareness within our industry for. So I can have some influence there with amplifying that concern about the impact of our industry on that. So it's kind of, for me, it's farmed animals as well as biodiversity, how you navigate interior design without using animal products and testing on animals, because sadly all those things still are very present.
Yeah. And second question is, one piece of well-meaning advice you've ignored.
That was to have employees. and I have never done that.
The advice was to have employees or not have them.
If you want to grow, want to grow your business,
right.
You need to have employees. And that was a real gut feeling for me of, I don't want to do that. I don't want to manage people. I really enjoy the work.
Yeah.
So if it were, whenever I've needed to, I've engaged outside people to help me, but I like to be like a team member in a collaborative team, the virtual one for other people. So that's kind of how I've kind of got around that in the past. But yeah, I really didn't want to. It's never been about looking like a big business. It's never been a money orientated kind of exercise. It's just always felt like doing it the right way.
So this is about following your heart again, isn't it? Because so often people like you, I mean, I'm not good at anything. I'm just good at finding other people to do stuff. But you're actually good at something, have a skill. And quite often people end up not actually doing what they love. It's like a head teacher, isn't it? How much teaching does a head teacher do? Very little, if anything. Same as you. If you did have other people, you'd end up not doing the thing you love. So I think it's quite brave to stick to that. Yeah,
it definitely feels right. There's times when I think, why haven't you got more help? But then there's software now. You know, I'm quite up to speed with software, which, you know, it's like having another person with me sometimes. You know, for accountancy, for running the projects, I've got software for that. So I'm happy to sort of find other ways of getting help.
Good. And the last thing I wanted to ask you, obviously I've written this book, which is also the name of the podcast, Fourth Bottom Line, and it's 50 characteristics of good leadership, and there's 50 different chapters. Each one is a different characteristic of leadership. And the question is, which one of those are you most in need of working on in your life at the moment?
Self-caring.
Right.
I feel that there's times I know too much about, especially after writing the book and researching for it, I feel quite weighed down with sadness, you know, what I've unearthed. And I don't know that I look after myself too well with that. I've always felt that this being more vocal about doing things in a less impactful way has kind of counterbalanced my eco-anxiety, but I feel I've had an extra dump of things to worry about. I haven't balanced myself out well enough with the self-care, really. So I've had a few little things to warn me, like, you know, putting my back out the other week, and, you know, that was a muscle spasm. You know, I need to make time and kind of have parameters on my days and my weekends and get better at that. So I have been working harder on that. But yes, definitely, I really related to that.
Well, I will mention your book again, Sustainable Interior Design, published by, is it published by Reba, or it's certainly commissioned by them?
It's their publishing arm, Reba Publishing, which is lovely to be
and it is
approached.
a beautiful, if you want some inspiration for great design, then it's definitely worth getting that. So anything you want to say that you haven't had a chance to?
Only on that, with the book, I kind of, because I dissected sustainability in 11 ways to sort of frame my book, you know, in the same way that you've kind of done with your book. But actually, I look at it and I think I've applied that to interiors, spaces, products, but you could use those as theory for any kind of application for any kind of industry. It's just using interior design as the example. But yeah, that was just a sort of a bit of a thing that I've realised since it's been out there.
Okay, brilliant. So let's finish there. Thanks so much for joining us today, Chloe.
Thanks so much for having me here, Paul. Thanks for noticing what I'm doing.
It's a pleasure to have you, Chloe.
Oh, thank you.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Fourth Bottom Line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website, paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and the fourth bottom line. Thank you for listening.